Good evening, welcome. This is the Red Hook Town Board meeting of Wednesday, February 28th. Would you be kind enough to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. It is unfortunately yet another wet, gray day here in the Hudson Valley. Valley life brings that occasionally. We have tonight our agenda. It's the second meeting of the month, so we'll be focusing a lot on committee and department reports, but it is the second meeting in February, so I'll be giving a brief update on the finances for 2023, and then we have some notes we'll report back. Bill Hamill and I will report back some notes from the Association of Towns, and then we'll jump right into the board reports and department reports as well. With that said, announcements. I only have one announcement, and that's our new Dutchess County Executive, Sue Serino, will be holding her State of the County 24 annual address right here in Red Hook. That's Thursday, March 14th at 5:30 at the high school. And if you would like to attend, they ask that you RSVP by March 12th. And it would help if the technology would stay on. There we go. All right, and there's the number to call if you'd like to call instead. Does anybody else have any announcements they'd like to make? Okay, why don't we jump right on in. Again, some slides relating to the annual audit update, which appears as an addendum on the website and is available from the clerk's office momentarily. Highlights, solid increasing fund balances despite some additional capital outlays. You've obviously heard we acquired the Cookingham Farm properties. As of the end of the year, we had purchased most of it. One house was a 2024 closing, and we've only sold the eastern portion of the farmlands at this point. And so this reflects that. Additional investment through the capital reserve accounts, the community preservation fund, again reminding folks that we have dedicated funds that can only be used for specific purposes, and we tapped into our community preservation fund for those open space acquisitions. Once again, what our debt ratings are, we haven't had to go to the debt markets in the last 5 years or so, or almost 5 years. But it's good to know that we have an extremely high rating, and it's been reiterated from Standard & Poor's. Some of the investments we've made in the last year or two: additional trails, farmlands, St. Margaret's infrastructure. You've heard us talk about the HVAC systems and making it ADA accessible, and so we're working on those projects, and they continue through 2024. Rec Connector, we've connected the Rick Park East and West in 2023, and the finances reflect that. More retrofitting of the town campus facilities and fast chargers. We continue to purchase more equipment for the highway department. It's important we always take a moment to thank our partners, county, state, and certainly private partners. We wouldn't be able to do much of what we are able to accomplish here in Red Hook were it not for the financial and certainly the human capital that we have access to here in the town of Red Hook. And here are some of the things we've done over the years to help pay for these investments. And I think I teased you at the last meeting and said despite those acquisitions that we made, our fund balances on our main three funds, and just to remind folks at home, we have an A fund, which is the fund that is payable by all residents, not just town residents, but village residents as well. We have the B and the DB fund, and those are specific to town outside of villages. And so you see that in both the A and B, we actually had increasing unappropriated fund balances. And with the DB, which is the highway, it's only a small drawdown. These are at the high end of our fund balance policy ratios, and so we wouldn't want them necessarily to get any higher than that. Budgeted, we had lots of ins and outs because of the acquisitions. Suffice it to say that we had quite a bit more revenue than we anticipated, especially in the B fund, sales tax, because we had two things occurring simultaneously. We had the conclusion of the previous 10-year sales tax agreement, which had a payment for the growth factor come in 2023, and then we had the new rate under the new agreement. And so our sales tax, you'll see in the audit or the annual update, is unusually high. It's $1 million, a little more than that we received. More detail on the fund balance reports. You can see both the unappropriated up top and the dedicated and appropriated in the bottom there. Just some pictures. We always like to put a few pictures on what we've spent your money on. And here is some photos from the Red Hook Gateway project. As you all know, we are intending to accomplish many public purposes. We have already put the lands under conservation easement. We have already purchased the farmlands. We have already sold off half of the farmlands at this point. We are looking at and pursuing community solar on a small portion on the west side, which was a former mine. We already have public access easements on the west side for the trail network. Up top here are some of the photos from the preserved farmlands. Here's the map you all, I think, have seen. Everyone has been mailed one, which details the areas, the red dotted lines being the trails on the west side. Also the lands that we are retaining to protect our water treatment facility. Up here, if you're looking by my cursor, there's a portion that will be given over to the village to expand their Abrams Park. And this area down here is the area that we are working with REPCO to develop affordable housing. And we hope to hear something in short order as to application for infrastructure related to that. And these are some of the initial design concepts that they had drawn up to go with the angles on pre-existing barn structures. I mentioned that we completed in 2023 the Rec West Connector project, and we are working, you probably saw last weekend, some more trail extension on the Sauk Hill trails. Here's the connector project. You see we have successfully moved pedestrians and bicyclists off of the roadway. Where my cursor is that area there is Rec Park East, and here's the walkway. I'm to understand the signage is coming in the next week or so. to get over to the west side here. Here's the photo of the west side. Want to thank all those volunteers last weekend doing trail maintenance and extension work. We have a very beautiful trails map that unfortunately we already have to update because we've been successful in establishing new trails. And if you don't already know, there was an announcement that Winnicke is receiving state funding for 142 acres of the formerly Camp Rising Sun property off of Oriole Mills for water source protection, much like we have accomplished with the Sawkill property, the Sawkill Trails off of Rec Park West. And we have been working collaboratively with them and hope to establish a trail on that property as well. And many thanks to the Trails Committee, and they've done a wonderful job establishing this for sure. Fast chargers, I dare say I think we have more EV infrastructure in our community than just about any municipality or township certainly. We have 2 fast chargers in addition to the 8 ports of level 2. What I've done is just add, in here's St. Margaret's, some photos of the work. I think once the indoor work is complete, and most of it is really just plaster work, but we are doing ADA accessible bathrooms and ADA accessible entrance. Thanks in no short order to funding we received from county. These are some older slides from last year. I've just added it to the show. We've done some work. The dog park, fixed it up, the combined Red Hook, Rhinebeck Dog Park, making some initial investments with a new fence. As you know, we took over maintenance of the park. The town of Rhinebeck was no longer interested in having the dog park, and so we took that over a few years ago, and we'd like to make some improvements to that. Generators, we completed our generator projects. We replaced ours. We had a over 30-year generator here at Town Hall. And the community center, which was the Office of Aging Friendship site, had no generator and was also a warming center. So working with the previous county executive, we were able to identify an opportunity to apply for a MIG grant a couple years ago, and so we've got that project completed in 2023. Here's some older initiatives. We're still working on our bridge project, which will take some time and additional funding. We made some improvements in 2023 also to Red Church Cemetery. There's no slide associated with that. I encourage you to go visit. Probably have another open house later this spring in conjunction with historic Red Hook. So like I said, the full annual update is available on the website as an addendum. You're welcome to get a copy from town clerk's office as well. But in a nutshell, 2023 was a successful year again. And we'll have more activity as we sell some of the properties now that we have easements on them. And so I anticipate 2024 will have another good year financially. And all of this without raising taxes over the last 8 years. Very good. Any questions, folks? Colleagues? No? All right. Well, for the folks at home, your elected officials, well, there's absolutely no criteria for establishing who gets elected to represent you. There are opportunities for continuing education, and so we go to Association of Towns annual conference and other courses and certainly webinars in order to stay up to date on what's happening in New York State. We meet with our colleagues. There are 933 towns in New York, if you wanted to know. And we all gather in New York City for what is essentially 2 very long days of courses, and occasionally we come across some things that are interesting to note and things that are coming down the pike, down the creek, down
Into the wetlands.
The kill.
down the kill.
The kill.
That's your segue. Bill, did you want to just maybe
Briefly discuss this.
briefly maybe mention what's coming down the pike?
Yeah, I went to a very interesting training about a revision to the New York State wetlands law, freshwater wetlands law. And the law was originally passed in 1975, and it has, of course, been updated. It's a part of the New York State Environmental Conservation Law. It's Amendment 24 and Article 24. But 2 years ago, they passed a really significant change that's going to impact our town. The first part became effective January 1st of last year, and that was just an increase of dues and fees that they charge to applicants on land that is going to be designated or has been designated as wetlands for permitting purposes. But the big 2 changes become effective January 1st of 2025 and then January 1st of 2028. And the reason it's so important is we're about to commence redoing our comprehensive plan. We just received a grant for about $100,000 to do that. We have a lot of wetlands in the town of Red Hook, and what's being proposed is really kind of a game-changing changes to how wetlands are regulated by the state. And I'm really glad that I went to this training. The main takeaways are that it has been the case for a very long time that the state regulates any wetlands that are 12.4 acres or larger. What they've done is they've said that what are wetlands considered of unusual importance, it could be any size, it could be a quarter of an acre. And if they meet one of 11 or more of these criteria that the state has set forth in the law, then they become regulated. And some of those, you know, I live near some, so I know that this is going to be significant. One is it's located in a watershed that has experienced significant flooding in the past, or is expected to experience significant flooding in the future from severe storm events related to climate change. It contains a plant species occurring in fewer than 35 sites statewide. It's a habitat for certain essential behaviors of endangered or threatened species, which we do have here in Red Hook. Big one is the vernal pools. We have lots of vernal pools, and now what they're saying, if a vernal pool is known to be productive for amphibian breeding, you know, like tree frogs, that will then, even if it's very, very small, it will be subject to DEC regulation. And if they're listed up here, these are the 11. And so what's important about that is because we have a fair amount of development that goes on here in Red Hook, effective January 1st of next year, this is going to be the case, and it's going to require some training for our planning board, our zoning board of appeals, and our building department. The other significant changes are that in January 1st of 2028, that size of 12.4 acres drops to 7.4 acres. So that really is very significant in terms of what the state is determining is going to be, mandatory wetland, and that's regardless of whether it meets one of the 11 criteria for unusual importance. Now, they passed the law, and of course they're having to issue regulations that are implementing, and so they've issued a notice of proposed rulemaking. And one of the things in there that is of interest, but we're not sure where it's going to go, is currently, and has been for a very long time, there's a 100-foot mandated buffer that DEC says buildings can't be within 100 feet of a freshwater wetland. There's discussion in this notice of proposed rulemaking of expanding it to 300 feet. That's a significant increase. There are a number of things in the proposed regulations that get into details of the types of amphibian species that are considered endangered, or that we have to do a better job of thinking about in terms of wetlands if they're really small. So this is going to require, I think, a fair amount of work on our part to get our arms around what it entails. And in the sense that we have lots of farmland and lots of open space, and we have lots of wetlands with lots of vernal pools, I think we're going to have to be rethinking our long-term development objectives for the town. And then the last thing that I want to mention, and I was a little surprised by this, two things. One is that, since the implementation of the law, the previous version, DEC had mapped the wetlands, and apparently there's about 1.2 million acres of wetlands in the state that are mapped by DEC. Those maps will no longer be of jurisdictional value. They won't be regulatory. They'll be informational. They're not going away, but they're not going to be the basis for which a decision is made of whether it's a wetland or not. And the presenter at this training, who's a land use attorney, they estimate that on January 1st of next year, that will essentially double the amount of wetlands in the state, just right off the bat. The other thing he talked about that's really important for us from a planning board and zoning board of appeals and building department is that there are obviously lots of planned developments and people building houses and subdivisions, and it's an issue of grandfathering. And basically the way they've updated the law is the only thing that will be subject to true grandfathering is if there is an actually approved valid building permit. So say a developer came in and got site plan approval. That's not going to be sufficient to grandfather them over these new changes. They have to have a building permit. So I think I'm glad I went to the training. It was an eye-opener. It was a full room, a big room. A lot of people were really interested in this, and I went back and I read, the law and the regulations, and I really think that we're going to have to pay some very close attention to this as we move into next year.
Sounds like a lot of work that we'll have to do also, which is why I've highlighted this particular section that says if for some reason we can't do it, we can transfer the function to the county or the department and pay for some of the services. But yeah, very, very important update there as far as DEC and regulatory efforts with wetlands and expansion, really. Thank you very much.
And I think some of it has to do with climate change and the severe storms we've had and areas of flooding that I know of in Red Hook that were not subject to flooding in the past and now are. So I think the state, on a much broader perspective is seeing that, and that was part of the underlying reason for this substantial update to the law.
Yeah. Very good. I had a few quick notes about some courses I thought were interesting. One of the sessions was about incorporating the CLPCA in seeker review, and how perhaps we should consider having our planning boards, Cassie, our planning boards incorporate right into the seeker docs how any project would, would it be consistent with the goals and objectives? So if you're approving a project and it's in contravention, let's say, of the goals of the CLCPA, how that might affect the environmental review and/or any proposed mitigation, or even frankly approval of a project. So I thought that was an interesting course. There was one on towns with gowns, and it's not a dress code. It's not yet. Towns with gowns, essentially folks references municipalities with colleges in them and some of the innovative programs that are happening. And one was a community that was short, like many, on EMT.
Bless you.
And so, bless you, Cassie. And so the college developed a course to get interested students certified as EMTs. And so
And that's something that already exists at Bard. There's
At Bard,
an
you've got
service
that.
on campus.
on campus,
Yeah.
you have the service on campus and the course as well?
I don't know if the course it's not offered through the college, but it might be.
Right.
Maybe presented on campus.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that for a fact though.
Right.
so.
It was just one example. I
Yeah.
wasn't suggesting, go run back and tell me, start teaching this if they aren't
There's an
already.
interest in that. Yeah.
But just, it was kind of interesting about how, just some good examples. The course, once again, cannabis, as we're all trying to figure out cannabis and the rollout and the regulations, and I guess there've been some court cases and what we can or cannot regulate, and as you know, we haven't yet adopted because we're trying to navigate what is an ever-changing landscape here. But basically, what it sounds like to the legal evils at AOT is that we can still regulate those three important factors: time, place, and manner. But obviously, there are certain confines that we have to work within. You can't, for example, you can't tell a cannabis dispensary that they can only be open for 2 hours a day. There has to be a minimum 70 hours per week, which to me seems kind of high, but no pun intended. But so that was an interesting course. And for our EDC, New York State CDBG BEST program, which has a couple of different areas that I think would be interesting for them to investigate. Micro enterprise and so on and so forth, funding available. So Jacob, maybe you could maybe take a look at that and discuss that with our EDC committee.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting, potentially good possibility. Of course, it comes with work for us, if we were to do it, but we're certainly all about trying to help our businesses here in Red Hook. Okay, that's what I have for my AOT notes.
So there was one other thing.
Oh, Bill.
In sort of related to the comp plan, there was a speaker that I went to about municipalities using pollinator gardens.
Yeah.
And the consultant who did the training, she does a lot of work with municipalities in the state, as well as large corporate like healthcare companies, or if they have nursing homes or industrial parks. And it was very educational about you know, that pollinator gardens, notwithstanding the fact that they help reduce flooding, they help reduce erosion, they are a much more cost-effective thing for municipalities because they only have to be mowed once or twice a year. And that, you know, that, the pitch was that there are a lot of places, say for example, around a large solar array. And there's a lot of places where people traditionally have planted grass, which is maybe not the best thing. And so it was a presentation to try to encourage municipalities to try to use pollinator gardens and to think about that. So from the perspective of our comp plan, going forward, the kinds of things that we may be thinking about is something we may want to, you know, be suggestive of using as we move forward.
Right. And that dovetails with the CLPCA, you know,
Yes, that's right.
actions that we can take that.
Yep.
Less intensive. Okay, very good. So shall we dive into building department reports? There were just 3 of us tonight. So, building department, who would like to do that? Jacob?
Bill thing.
It's the bill department? All right.
I'm happy to,
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, I am the liaison to the
Okay,
building.
okay, well, Jacob some airtime, but that's fine.
That's fine.
You guys have it.
This one page sums it up. February is usually a slightly slower month because it's the dead of winter. So they issued 23 permits. They did 68 inspections, so they're really out and about a lot. They issued 38 either certificates of occupancy or certificates of completion. They received 3 complaints and they generated $9,489 in revenue. The report itself is very detailed. It has every address, everything that was done at those addresses. I'm not going to bore people with the details. They certainly can read it.
Okay, well, I've just turned it upside, there we go, okay. Police report. It's you again, Bill.
Yeah, gosh. So for December, they had 97 incidents or calls that they went on in the town of Red Hook. They issued 29 traffic summons, no parking tickets, and they made 1 arrest. The details of the various calls that they went out on are in the report. I would remind our viewers that the school incidents are not incidents. Those are, they have an officer that goes to the school every day for directing traffic, and it's logged in that way. So it's a little deceiving. People might think that there's bad things happening at the school. There are not. And once again, wellness checks are high in the calls, which is very important.
Terrific. Jacob, would you like to do the end of year highway department report?
Yes, I would. So Teresa shared the end of year report for 2023. It includes an overview of the duties and responsibilities of the highway department, including emergency response, maintenance and repair and reconstruction of things like roads, bridges, culvert pipes and catch basins, town-owned vehicles, equipment and buildings housing them, roadside debris removal, snow and ice removal, sign replacement, repair, hazardous tree removal. Some highlights for 2023 included some major construction consisting of paving, 1.91 miles of road, they're listed here. Chip sealing, the road's listed here, distance of 2.8 miles. There was a number of maintenance items here, including replacing 375 feet of culvert pipe on 4 roads, replacing the roof on a small utility storage shed, installing weight limit signs, removing almost 200 dangerous trees between the town highway crew and with a contractor, clearing, maintaining, and replacing catch basins, mowing shoulders on town roads, the equivalent of 240 lane miles. There were some training courses that were completed by the staff over the course of the year. There's a list of shared services, including different projects with the town of Milan, the town of Rhinebeck, and transferring 3,500 tons of dirt from the rec park to St. Margaret's with 35 truckloads. A few administrative items, including installing master switch shutoffs on trucks parked in the garage to minimize the risk of fire, doing ArcGIS sign inventory, upgrading the fuel system being completed, sale of surplus equipment for the rec park, still facilitating the electronics recycling event by coordinating with the CAC, who's meeting just next door. Purchasing a excavator with attachments and a stainless steel sander for one of the trucks, and then shake hatch logs, which are in the a lot of good work happening in the highway department over the course of 2023, so thank you to Teresa and her staff for all of that.
Thank you, Jacob. And as it turns out, Christine is not with us tonight to do the rec park commission. And does that mean you're willing to take a stab at it?
I was going to say, it starts with an Eagle Scout project, so I assume you want to do it because it's a big thing for you.
Okay.
I can jump in if I need to. If you miss anything, that's really thorough
Thank you
report.
very much. And the project that Jacob is referencing is a proposal to design a new baseball shed at the rec park to replace the existing one. And so the design is being done in concert with our rec park staff to make sure that it comes out with all the attributes that we want. Tennis and pickleball court nets, they're stored for the winter, and as I think I mentioned at our last meeting, was able to negotiate with the state of New York to have indoor pickleball this winter at the former Eddie Parker Training Academy on Spring Lake Road, and so my understanding is that's going quite well. We have dozens and dozens of folks who have signed up and are playing there 3 days a week. His report talks about what's essentially shut down for the winter time. They are preparing, however, for the fishing contest. For folks at home, it will be Saturday, April 13th from 8 till 12 p.m. And here comes the rain, the driving rain. Skate park, we have ordered the acoustic fence panels to help deaden the sound from the skate park, and we have accepted a donation in part for some of the neighbors. Wow, that's quite a sideways rain out there. The John Deere Gator speaks about. We're endeavoring to repair the damage from the vandalism to the restrooms, and we have received some settlement and restitution from the individuals there. A lot of downed limbs. John has been shocked by how many pine cones have invaded the parks and has been
I hate to say this, Bob, you gotta speak up.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
God is drowning you out.
I'm wondering whether we should
Literally.
close the lines.
Thanks, Bill. John references all the pine cones at the rec park, snack bar, some work being done on that. The rules, going over the rules for the park itself, and that's it. For the water board department report, we have both the annual and the January report, I think. Isn't that correct, Bill?
Yeah, the January report is just a monthly work session where the contractor who runs our water department and Hank and Secretary Doreen meet to discuss sort of month-to-month operational issues, things like getting testing done, issues about supplies that have to be purchased, the rate at which we're pumping the wells, how well they're operating, the wonderful quality of our water, which has remained unchanged, and various sort of ongoing items, whether it's flushing. There's something called dead end flushing, where a line, if there's a water line and you're at the end of that line, sediment things accumulate at the back end, so periodically, it usually happens around where fire hydrants are located, they have to do periodic flushing, and issues of this dirty water issue on 196 Linden. There are actually several houses there, and they have an issue that they're going to have to address with flushing that has not come up before. That's month to month. The main thing here is the annual report. So every year, the water board meets 2 to 4 times a year to talk about, the operations of our water department, things to be planning for, issues that have come up, and this is the year-end report for 2023 on the operations. It gives all the basics on who's on the board, who's our operator, water quality, and then sort of issues that they need to think about. And a lot of them ultimately will be financial issues for the water department and the town. So they talk about increasing rates, and then plans for 2024, trees and things that have to be dealt with that are maybe too close to our tank. But the actual income, which is good to get an idea historically how much money, there's 488 homes, which is about 1,600 people, that get water from us. And things that have been done, like wells have to be rehabbed. We had a major rehabs done in 2021, and things like well pumps, and doing things to meet requirements. So that's, and then there's the cash. The next slide is the cash reserve. These are our reserve funds. So the water department's doing very well, and it's a good thing because College Park, which is the oldest part of the water department, is approaching, let's see, if it was built in the 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's over 70 years old. Things will fail. It's just inevitable, and so it's important that you have decent reserves to be able to deal with, replacing mains, and also, having to just dig up faulty pipes. And there's different kinds of pipes. As the water department expanded with the different developments, such as College Park and Linden Acres and those, the technology's changed as they were installed, so now they're having to go back and follow up and see, do we have an issue with the pipes that were used in one area as opposed to another. And it's important that we have, a good amount of money, and eventually, as we've talked about here, we're going to have to either rehab our tank or replace our tank. Either option is expensive. So that's discussed. And then at the last page is comparability of, average gallons pumped, in the millions, and the build to pump ratio. And we've been pretty consistent. And we had our first meeting, the water board had its first meeting of the year last week, a week ago, and one of the things that's not in this report, because it was discussed after the fact, is the pump at the tank. We do not have an emergency backup generator, and the reason we haven't had one is it's a gravity-fed system, and the tank usually has at least 3 days worth of water in it, so when power goes out, people have water. And we have backup water from the village, who does have a generator. And I think, it's an expensive proposition, but as the town supervisor said earlier, we just replaced the generator here. We got one for the community center. We got grant money to do it. And one of the things we're talking about is applying for some grant money to get a good generator. They had some arrangements with like Central Hudson and others where if it was a really serious emergency, a long-term outage, they have these.
Temporary.
Yeah, it's on the back of like a back truck, and but they move it around, so you're only gonna get it for a day or two.
Yeah.
And this would be, you know, a really good long-term solution for the water department. So I'm glad that that's something that's it's not in this report, but it'll certainly be in next year's report.
Well, I'm glad that it's getting consideration, as I mentioned to you. I've been encouraging Hank for years to consider that, and, you know, we've been lucky, but you know what happens, luck runs out at some point. All right, tree preservation, Jacob,
Yep.
do you
So-
think you could do this one in less than 10 minutes?
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to skip a couple of things.
How come you always get the easy ones?
Yeah, it's amazing.
The committees and liaison two are efficient.
Yeah, to the efficient ones, yeah, thanks.
So from last week's meeting, the Tree Preservation Commission, 4 items they put on the report. First, the spring tree order has been finalized. Second, May 4th has been selected for the Arbor Day celebration. The committee's also ordered the saplings for the giveaway for Arbor Day. And 2 committee members will attend the Tree City recognition ceremony in New Paltz on March 28th.
What year are we in, do we remember? We're close to 20.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 17 or something like that. I think the village is at 21. And we're behind that.
Well, folks, are there any public comments? Any public comments tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
I don't think you can motion to adjourn, Bill, but thank you.
No, but I
We
can send
appreciate
out, I can send out the
justice.
chromatic waves.
Well, there are a lot of waves outside, but at this time, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Stay healthy. There's a lot of not so fun viruses going around. Some of us have been fortunate so far to avoid them all. But we want you to remain healthy and happy as always. And again, thank you for joining us. At this time, I would like to make a motion to go into attorney-client session. Good night, all. All, you second that?
I second.
Thank you very much. All in favor, Jacob?
Aye.
Aye. Good night. Thank you.